I'm Njoka and you're watching World of Africa. Great to have you with us today. This week, it's about abrupt natural disasters and an economic turmoil in Africa's most populous nation. Plus, the coup belt remains defiant against French President Emmanuel Macron and his cabinet, telling him off on his face. All that's coming up in the next 30 minutes. Welcome to the show. We decide who comes to Europe and not the traffickers. A strong statement from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who visited the Italian island of Lampedusa following complaints from the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and a state of emergency declared on the island due to the surge in migrants, mostly from North Africa. Von der Leyen proposed a 10-point action plan to help Italy deal with the rise in asylum seekers. But why is this proving to be a never-ending problem between Europe and Africa? Let's find out in our maiden report this week.
This is the island of Lampedusa in Sicily, Italy. Over 6,000 migrants, mostly from North Africa, arrived on the island. Police started to move some of the migrants to Sicily by ferry and plane.
I want to send a clear message to those who want to enter Italy illegally, that it's not convenient to rely on human traffickers because they ask you for a lot of money and they put you on boats that are often not equipped to make those journeys. And in any case, if you enter Italy illegally, you will be detained and repatriated.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen even traveled to Lampedusa as dozens of the Italian island citizens protested over a recent surge in migrant arrivals. The European Union now says they have a plan for the migrants issue in Europe.
It is very important for me because irregular migration is a European challenge and it needs a European answer. So we are in this together.
Lampedusa, which is closer to Africa than the Italian mainland, has been overwhelmed this week by thousands of people hoping to reach Europe from Tunisia, which has replaced Libya as the main base for migrant smuggling operations in the Mediterranean. The Italian Red Cross says that around 700 new arrivals had been transferred off Lampedusa, and 2,500 more transfers were planned to try to relieve pressure on the island's refugee center, which has a normal capacity of around 400 people. As of the 16th of September 2023, the center was hosting about 3,800 people, down significantly from the more than 6,000 registered that week. There have been misfortunes in the recent past. Shipwrecks dominated headlines in August, where thousands of migrants on board boats drowned at sea in Greece, forcing the Pope to react.
With pain and shame, we must say that since the beginning of the year, almost 2,000 men, women, and children have already died in this sea trying to reach Europe. It is an open wound for humanity.
According to Interior Ministry statistics in Italy, nearly 126,000 people have arrived in Italy so far by boat this year, compared to 66,000 this time last year and 42,000 in 2021. The year 2016 holds the recent record for migrant sea arrivals, with a total of 181,000 people. Meanwhile, even Poland is dealing with its version of the migrant crisis. Details about the corruption scandal are coming to light a month ahead of the country's parliamentary election, scheduled for the 15th of October, leaving law and justice struggling to control the damage.
We're talking about people, and what I've seen, what we've all seen over the last couple of years, is weaponizing people who are in the most desperate of situations and using their vulnerability as a way to fuel what is often a political conflict, in many cases a domestic political issue.
Africans in Tunisia, meanwhile, are facing increasing discrimination and violence since President Kais Saied's February remarks that sub-Saharan migrants are part of a plot to alter the country's identity and demographics. Tunisia has replaced Libya as the main point of departure for people attempting the deadly Mediterranean crossing to Italy. Normally, when disaster strikes some of the African countries, the affected population looks for a way out, fearing for the worst, or in search of better life, where they often feel the grass is greener. Italy says it is prepared for such eventualities. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
To Sudan now, the crisis in the northeastern nation is evolving by the day. The military is seeking to expand their troops, so they have recruited civilians. Airstrikes are going on, killing hundreds everywhere they drop. Most Sudanese are desperate to escape as a de facto military chief makes a tour of at least 6 countries, including South Sudan, to support. Here's a report.
Wad Hamid Base, Sudan, trapped in their country and nothing to do. Thousands of young people thronged here for a recruitment drive. The massive rush began after Sudan's army chief, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, said the army is ready to receive and equip voluntary fighters. The possible recruitment of civilians, which could worsen already deadly cycle of violence. In the middle of all the brawls is this man, al-Burhan, the military chief who has refused to give in or give up. He visited army bases in Port Sudan ahead of planned talks with neighboring countries. He then went to Egypt, met President El-Sisi before boarding a plane and headed to Qatar, where he met Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. This was Burhan's 3rd trip abroad since August 29th and came a day after he issued a constitutional decree ordering the dissolution of the Rapid Support Forces.
This group, RSF, are not like our people in Sudan. We have nothing to say to them, and now is not the time for talks. We are dedicating all our time to this war. We are dedicating it to ending this rebellion. We are focused on ending this period and coming out of it stronger, steadfast, and with our heads held high.
The de facto leader continued with his whirlwind tour in Entebbe, where he met with Uganda's president, Yoweri Museveni. Even as the war persists, Sudan's main civilian political grouping warned that the country could be split and enter a protracted civil war if rival military factions that have been fighting for 5 months form competing governments. Since the outbreak of war between the RSF and Sudan's army on April 15th, the RSF has controlled swathes of the capital Khartoum, as well as areas of southwest and central Sudan. Another faction that has clashed recently with the army, Abdelaziz al-Hilu's SPLM-N, controls large parts of South Kordofan state. The army remains in control in other parts of the country, including the eastern Red Sea city of Port Sudan, to which some government officials and international agencies have relocated.
يعني أن نتجه نحو سيناريوهات حدثت في دول أخرى بوجود طرفين يسيطرون على مناطق مختلفة في بلد واحد.
Apart from the war, Sudan is facing another crisis. Flash floods caused by heavy rains in Sudan's River Nile have destroyed thousands of homes. At least 10 people have died this month because of the flooding. But the ongoing fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces is hampering the response.
We need houses to shelter ourselves. The situation is bad. Even before the heavy rainfall, it was bad enough. We want the government to help people here. People have no income to buy construction material.
All this crisis is forcing thousands away from what they called home. Sudanese queued at a cramped office to apply for passports in the eastern city of Port Sudan. Since authorities inaugurated a new passport office in Port Sudan in late August, hundreds have lined up here. Everyone here is desperate to obtain paperwork that will allow them to leave Sudan's deadly war behind.
I come every day early in the morning and stay till 9 p.m. with no progress. We just come and wait. We try to ask anyone, but no one gives us any instructions. This shows how unorganized the work is. With all honesty, it's unorganized. There is a problem.
About 1 million people have crossed Sudan's borders since April, fleeing the devastating war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. According to the UN, more than half the country is in urgent need of humanitarian aid, and 6 million people are on the brink of famine. With the rival generals battling for control of the resource-rich North African nation, it's the common people who continue to suffer. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Let's now head to North Africa, where two countries ravaged by two separate natural disasters are still struggling to pick up their feet and recover. Libya, which was hit by a devastating flash flood and collapsed dam that flushed thousands of lives from the face of the earth, is marshalling itself to unite the divided east and west regions to provide relief for the affected victims and rebuild the destroyed cities. Here's a report from Darna.
Marrakesh in Morocco is still teetering towards recovering from a 6.8 magnitude earthquake that tore throughout the city into neighboring regions, ripping apart structures and lives. When a distant neighbor bore the brunt of another natural disaster, flash floods. For many Libyans, the collective grief over the death of thousands has morphed into a rallying cry for national unity in a country blighted by 12 years of conflict and division. In turn, the tragedy has ramped up pressure on the country's leading politicians, viewed by some as the architects of the catastrophe. The oil-rich country has been divided between rival administrations since 2014, with an internationally recognized government in Tripoli and a rival authority in the east, where Derna is located. Both are backed by international patrons and armed militias, whose influence in the country has ballooned since a NATO-backed Arab Spring uprising toppled autocratic ruler Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Numerous United Nations-led initiatives to bridge the divide have failed. In the early hours of September 11th, two dams in the mountains upstream of Derna burst.
The number of affected people is very big. The damage is huge. It's hard to describe or measure it.
An outpouring of support for the people of Derna followed. Residents from the nearby cities of Benghazi and Tobruk offered to put up the displaced. In Tripoli, some 1,450 kilometers west, a hospital said it would perform operations free of charge for any injured in the flood.
This catastrophe proved that Libyans are united. Even those who have opposing political stance and views or have different external or internal interests were united after what happened in the east, in Derna, Al-Baida, Susa and Shahat. It proved that Libyans are united.
The disaster has fostered rare instances of the opposing administrations cooperating to help those affected. As recently as 2020, the two sides were in an all-out war. General Khalifa's forces besieged Tripoli in a year-long failed military campaign to try to capture the capital, killing thousands. Others have leveled blame for the burst dams on government officials.
I reassured the citizens that whoever made a mistake, neglected, the prosecution will certainly take firm measures, file a criminal case against him, and put him on trial.
However, on ground zero, there is a new problem now. Aid workers and volunteers on the ground in Libya's Derna have raised concerns that the aftermath of the flash floods that ravaged the city could soon result in an epidemic.
The international organizations know the harm of decomposed bodies that remain unburied. But until this moment, there are no cases reported of an outbreak of a contagion that spreads and infects others.
Doctors say the lack of sanitation and capacity to deal with the number of dead bodies could be catastrophic.
What we urge people is to stay away from areas with stagnating water and, of course, dead bodies. Also, we advise them not to drink at all from groundwater because it might be contaminated with sewage water or anything else.
In the years ahead, Gaddafi's ousting. Derna was considered a bastion of Islamist extremists, including affiliates of ISIS. Rebuilding the damage is going to be a headache for a divided Libya and could take years. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
In West Africa, Nigeria's annual inflation rose to its highest level in nearly 2 decades in July at 24.08% against 22.79% in June, worsening a cost of living crisis in Africa's largest economy as President Bola Tinubu's reforms continue to take effect. Louisa Olaniyi sent us this report from Abuja.
Nigeria's annual inflation rate accelerated to an 18-year high of 25.8% in August, as Africa's largest economy grapples with rising prices ahead of a central bank interest rate decision later in September. In May, President Bola Tinubu removed a popular but costly decades-old petrol subsidy and ended exchange controls. This led to a spike in prices, from food to transport fares, and angering unions who have threatened strikes. The August inflation figure rose for an 8th straight month from July's 24.08%, compounding a cost of living crisis worsened by Tinubu's reforms. Official data shows the last time Nigerians experienced this level of inflation was in August of 2005. Analysts say Naira depreciation, higher fuel and food prices, logistics costs, and money supply growth were some of the major drivers of Nigeria's inflation.
The removal of subsidy helped in exacerbating the situation, whereby increasing the inflation, and also the devaluation, the unification of the exchange rate, which led to the devaluation of the naira, also helped in increasing the current inflation levels. So that's why I said the current administration have a responsibility with respect, because the government is a continuum, so it has a responsibility in respect to where we are currently.
Contrary to analysts' expectations, the central bank raised rates by a smaller than expected 25 basis points in July. It is due to set rates again on September 26th, and some analysts expect a more hawkish stance. As price of staples rise, food inflation, which accounts for the bulk of Nigeria's inflation basket, rose to 29.34% in August from 26.98% in July.
We can't keep blaming the issue of the war, because when you look at Nigerians' inflation, we have not really seen a reduction in inflation. But despite this increase in rates by the central bank, but when you look at the developed countries, there have been a moderation in inflation after persistent increase in it. So that's why we cannot continue to blame the war. We have our local issues to contend with.
The price of diesel has more than doubled at 850 Nigerian naira a litre, which is about $1.12. Only a year ago, diesel was selling for 400 naira a litre. Petrol is around 3 times more expensive since the end of May, when the government removed a subsidy on petroleum products. Petrol is between 580 naira a litre to 630 naira a litre, up from 195 naira before the removal of the subsidy. The central bank's decision to float the national currency against the US dollar has also resulted in a depreciation of the naira, further pushing up prices of other goods as well.
Nigeria's annual inflation rate continued to rise despite government interventions, hitting 25.8% in August 2023, the highest rate it has gotten to since September 2005. Quite a number of factors, experts say, had contributed to this rise, from global economic issues, government policy on unified exchange rate, subsidy removal, which led to the rise in transportation costs, insecurity causing drop in the supply of agricultural products to the market, and more. Greater focus is on the concrete plans of the government at addressing the issues, as the effectiveness of the measures so far remains a subject of debate. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi, WION World is One.
And finally, France has banned cultural venues from collaborating with artists from coup-infested countries like Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. And now artists are reacting to this amongst other issues that includes France's decision to suspend visa issuance to nationals of the countries. Here's a report from Niamey, Niger.
It was at this event that the French President Emmanuel Macron made a statement that would travel faster than the Concorde to West Africa.
Et considérant qu'il n'y a pas de double standard.
How can you expect us to issue visas or engage in cultural cooperation when you no longer even allow an ambassador to go out, when he is persona non grata and we refuse to allow him to eat?
Qu'il est persona non grata et qu'on refuse qu'il puisse s'alimenter.
And instead of the military juntas in Niger or Burkina Faso receiving the mailbox, the message was delivered to another set of recipients, the artists. This Nigerian flutist and singer has a response.
The French should respect us. If we say, I'm not going to give a visa, that's like a child saying, if you don't do that, I can't buy you a sweet. We are not at that level. We have gone beyond that.
In Niger, artists are reacting to this amongst other issues that includes France's decision to suspend visa issuance to nationals of the country. France seems to have been angered by scenes in Niamey a few days after the coup that toppled Mohamed Bazoum. Many artists, in efforts to praise their new masters, drew big paintings that earned them some admiration from the new presidents and gave them some money and leverage. Or even this, where musicians who turned out new tunes to match a surge in patriotic fervor in concerts held in Niamey streets and the main stadium.
We don't want to do any advocacy. Usually when there are phenomena of this kind, we do advocacy. But in this case, we won't be doing it. We don't beg. We are companies of the world. We are artists of the world and the world has to deal with us. We can't remove our cultures from the world's culture.
But what is at the heart of France's seething anger is this: people demonstrating to demand the departure of French ambassador and soldiers in Niger or demanding they respect the new regime. However, France's culture minister Rima Abdul Malak downplayed the suspension of visas for artists from Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, saying it was due to security concerns in the light of recent military coups in those countries and in no way a boycott. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And it's a wrap on this episode of World of Africa. Do you have a story idea from the continent that you want told on our show? Well, get in touch with us on X or any other social media platform and tell us about it using the hashtag World of Africa. We'd love hearing from you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Njoka. Goodbye for now. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.